In our 78th season, the Palm Beach Civic Association expands its communication outreach with a state-of-the-art television studio. We call it Studio 33480, the zip code for the beautiful island of Palm Beach. Sponsored by Finley Galleries, our goal is to bring you in-depth interviews with the most colorful and knowledgeable personalities on the island. And now, our host.
Hello and welcome to Studio 33480. With me today is somebody who has really given hours and hours and hours of his time in the service of the town of Palm Beach. René Silvin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on the program. I admire all of the programs that you've put together, so it's really quite a privilege that I'm in your lineup. Thank you.
Oh, it is our privilege. Now, let's start with the big news. You have just stepped away from a job you've done for many years. How many years were you the chair of the Landmarks Preservation Commission?
I was on the commission for 8 years, but I've been chair for 2. So I went through all the normal processes of alternate for 2 years, and then 2 years as a voting member, 2 years as a vice chair, and then the final last 2 years. Because it's the honor that they gave me. As you know, it's the commissioners that elect their officers. So I'm extremely grateful for them for having had the privilege of serving them as their chair for 2 years.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I know everybody appreciates that you did that, certainly. So tell me about what you love about Palm Beach. And has that kind of inspired you to want to protect its character in some way?
Well, very much so. The appreciation for Palm Beach architecture, mostly residential architecture, has been something that has been ingrained in me since I was a small child. Even though my career was overseas and in hospital management, when I was a little boy, my mother lived here, and I used to come and visit her at Christmas time. And she used to say to me, René, I'm going to take you today to Mrs. So-and-so's house. Once it was the Kennedy property, once it was the Mar-a-Lago and others. And she would say to me, now you're going to eat in the kitchen, which was fine with me because I had more fun. But she said afterwards, I've arranged for the project, manager or the architect in some instances to show you around. And tonight we're going to have a quiz. And it was a game. And so every night when I would visit my mother from the age of 6 on, but it was just for Christmas, we would play a game, and it would be about who designed it and what was the plan and what was the style. And so it was something that I'd always wanted to do. And when I retired, I was able to apply to become a member of Landmarks, and luckily the town council put me on the commission.
What a fabulous story and fabulous training. I mean, sincerely. Now, I know that you grew up in Switzerland, is that right?
Yes, I did.
So you had a European upbringing. Do you think that in some way, I'm sure it did in some way, influence your tastes, your sensibilities about buildings, architecture, and so forth?
Well, I was very fortunate because the company that I was head of owned and operated hospitals in 10 countries, and they were often in the capital of those countries. So Paris, London, Zurich, even though that's not the capital of Switzerland, but cities that had great architectural roots. And since many of the hospitals that we owned, I would say actually all of the ones in the cities that I've just listed were partially had some historic buildings. On the site of our Zurich hospital was Mussolini's home, for example. And on the site of our Paris hospital was some other very important historic buildings. So I had to work with the preservationists and the version of their cities and their countries' versions of our Landmarks Commission in order to integrate the hospitals into these sites. So yes, I was very, very lucky to have been able, even though our hospitals weren't historic, some of the buildings on some of the sites were. And I learned there how to deal with very different commissions because they all operated differently and they all had different kinds of enforcement rules. And I found it an absolute pleasure to learn those rules and to work with them.
Wow, another great training ground for you. Uh, you know, landmarks preservation, I would imagine you are heroes to some people and maybe a thorn in their side to others. And it's got to be some kind of a balancing act. Tell me how you reflect back on that.
It's really an excellent point. So to talk to that point, I feel that a landmarks commissioner has to have three aspects to their repertoire of talents. One, they have to have some knowledge of the ordinance here in town and knowledge of the architectural history. The second is taste, good taste. And the third, which hits now back, dovetails into your question, compassion. We are not here to inflict harm on people. And so, yes, I would say that, we have two functions. One of the function is to work with owners who have come to us with requests for restoration or renovation or upgrading of their homes. If you take a major historic home, they were not designed for modern day usage. They would not have family rooms that give out onto pools. They had large servants' wings that people want to convert into usable space for modern living. So they come to us, that's the first function, is when they come to us for us to review that. In my 8 years, we have never not reached a solution. We've always reached a solution. Sometimes applicants have come back maybe once or twice additional times, but within a very short period of time, we've reached solutions that were mutually satisfactory. So I would say that relative to that aspect of the Landmarks Commission, where there are very few people who were sore with us. Now, then the second function is designating properties. Up until now, we have been designating about 10 properties a year. This wonderful town council has doubled the budget of our consultants, so we are now heading towards designating 20 properties per year. And there still remains a stigma in some people's minds that landmarking, protecting a house is the kiss of death, that they will never be able to work with us, that they wouldn't be able to modernize their homes. And we have to reason with them and explain to them and educate them. And there are still also some realtors in town, although this is really diminishing now, but there are still some realtors in town who feel that it will lower the value of their properties. So we've had to work on a public relations campaign, if you will, to educate the general public and the specific homeowners that it is not the kiss of death. You will be able to renovate your homes. And then we also quote from a project that was provided by the Preservation Foundation here. Recently, last year, they commissioned a study by Place Economics, a man by the name of Donovan Ripkemer, who's internationally famous. And he was able to demonstrate that landmark properties have escalated faster than non-landmark properties. So we use that also when we can reason, sit down with homeowners and try to reach them so that the fears that they have, and I understand any kind of threat, these are all very, very successful independent people. They don't want to be told what to do. I can understand that, but we have to work with them and very gently try to bring them along and to educate them into how we believe.
That is challenging, but I'm so happy to hear that you really have had resolution in every case.
In every case for restoration and renovation, yes. We have not always reached the successful conclusion with a homeowner who objects violently to our protecting their home. Now, the ordinance does not call for subjective judgment to be applied, but I'm very proud of the fact that the Landmarks Commission has heart. And I'm very proud of the fact that all of the commissioners realize that we're not here to inflict pain on people. We're here to help them, and also not to hand off a lot of hot potatoes to the town council. Because if we hand the town council an unsatisfied homeowner, then they have a huge problem to deal with, and they have enough big problems to deal with without us adding to that workload.
Right. Well, you are moving on to other things, but one of the other things that occupies your time is as an author of 5 books.
Yes, yes. One on Addison Meisner.
Wonderful. And what's your latest? Is there one you'd like to share with us?
The one that I'm most proud of is a book on a great ship called the Normandy. It was the French line's flagship during up until the Second World War, and it was sunk in the harbor of New York. But it was considered a masterpiece of art. And when I was a small child, I crossed on all the great liners because my parents lived on opposite sides of the ocean. And so I studied these liners again, back to the time that I was a child. They were the happiest moments of my life on the great liners. And I always dreamt of writing about a book about what I think was the greatest liner, which was the French line's flagship, the Normandy.
Oh, that's terrific. And so also, of course, you applied your architectural knowledge, and probably you got to do a great deal of research when you looked into Addison Mizner.
Oh, yes, that was so much fun. And I used mostly the files from the Palm Beach Historical Society. Sometimes the Palm Beach County Historical Society, sometimes we tend to forget them, but they have fabulous resources. I learned how to deal with archivists. They are a very talented group of people who are not always appreciated. And when they know that you appreciate their talent, they will help you with everything that they have. And so I spent months in the offices of the Historical Society of Palm Beach County and loved working with them under the direction of Debbie Murray, who is their senior researcher and archivist.
So you probably will be doing some writing. What is next on your life plan?
One of the books that I wrote was about the Duchess of Windsor, because when I was a young man running the American Hospital of Paris, she was on the board of directors, and she took a shine to what we were doing. And as a result of that, I became her escort in Paris for the 3 years of her life after the Duke died and before the onset of her dementia. So when I wrote that book, I found that there was a deluge of requests from venues that wanted me to lecture on her and on the subject. So we lecture fairly widely now. I have 27 lectures this winter alone on 20 different historic subjects. So we'll be speaking at the Kravis Center at the end of March on Jackie O, who was a lady who I knew. She was a friend of my mother's. And we'll be speaking at the Four Arts on Audrey Hepburn, another marvelous woman who I knew. So what keeps me busy and keeps me impassioned are the lectures that I am so fortunate to have had a plethora of demands to speak at venues where I've met such an amazing array of wonderful people.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned those two local dates too, because we will definitely try to keep up with you and all of your activities going forward, René.
Oh, Wendy, if I saw you in the audience, it would inspire me and it would really light me up. So I do hope I get to see you at some of the venues.
You got it. So, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
They're on the list and the shiny sheet all the time of the speaker calendars, or on my website. You can see them. We would be so honored if you would be our guest and come to something.
You've got it. So excited to do that. René Silvin, thank you so much for joining us. All the best wishes going forward. And, we look forward to seeing you at the lectern.
Been a great pleasure. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, René. And that does it for this time in Studio 33480. We thank you, as always, so much for watching, and we will see you next time, right here in Studio 33480.
Studio 33480 is brought to you by the Palm Beach Civic Association, our sponsor, Finley Galleries, and our viewers. We welcome your thoughts on how our programming can best serve our members and residents.